So thank you for being here. It's really nice to have a full house almost. This is great to have so many of you here. And of course you've all got good reasons for being here, but we'll come to that in a moment. I'll first tell you a little bit about how I come to this, because I'm very much not standing here as an IT expert or an expert in computers. But if I can claim any kind of expertise, it's expertise in educating children. And this is how, as a teacher, you come to most things. You know, I have to teach maths, so I have to know about maths, and I have to teach literacy, and I have to teach biology, and all these kind of things. And so I need to develop some expertise in it. And if you've had your children here for longer, you won't be that surprised to hear that Waldorf came a little late to the story of digital technology. And in fact, there's quite a few people who would probably look at something like this and go, I thought you didn't do technology in Waldorf schools. And so it's a habit, a reputation that takes quite long to get away from. And it's probably because of this question of what is real. And are things that aren't really real still meaningful, or do we need to judge them, condemn them possibly as possibly harmful? Do we need protection from this realm? And as often, the answer is not either or, but as well as, which is where I'm going to in a little while. I teach teachers, not just here in Ringwood, but all around the world, in different places. And there isn't a school I've been to where this isn't still a question. So I don't think I'm going to leave you with a deep-seated satisfaction this afternoon. Oh, okay, that's how it's going to work. Because to be honest, none of us really know. It's too new. How can we? My generation is the generation of people who shape education and shape schools, but we all grew up without this. So, you know, we're coming late to the game from that perspective, from a personal perspective as well. But that is not necessarily a bad thing, as I hope to be able to show you. So, one thing I want to allay straight away is that as a movement, and there are about 1,300 schools or so in the world, catering for about 1 million Waldorf pupils, most schools would be able to sign up to this statement, which is done by the German Waldorf Association. Of course, it's our responsibility as a school to make sure that young people have the skills they need. It would be irresponsible to release young people of age 16, 17, 18 into the world without having some useful knowledge and skills in the realm of digital communication, for want of a better word right now. The question is, when should this happen, and how should this happen? And so what I want to share with you really falls into two aspects. Because one thing that, as you'll see later on, the mainstream approach tends to get consistently wrong is to understand at what age certain things should be coming to children. As you'll see later on, I'm going to show you some mainstream lesson plans for media education, which, for example, involve 6-year-olds having their own email addresses and learning about footprints and things like that. And I think, does that have to happen? Does that need to happen? Do they need to know this? Or at what point might that information be essential? And at what point might it first be useful, etc., etc.? So I'm coming to it not from an IT perspective, but from a pedagogical perspective. So what I'd like to start with, and you'll find that the talk falls roughly into two parts, is how do we work with the needs of the children when they're, let's say, below 9 or 10 years of age, and what happens from that time onwards. And there is an element where you could say, well, this is the parents and this is the teachers, but partly because we're all sort of struggling to find our way here, a partnership is really important in that. Yeah, this isn't, and by partnership I don't mean the school saying to parents, you mustn't do this. It's really the question of, can we have a conversation about the things that we do with the children at school or at home and the effect that they have. So, first question to you, and you don't need to answer this to me, but could you find somebody that you didn't come with and tell that person why you're here. This now, I mean not philosophically on the web. What brings you to this moment, to this space? One more minute, and what's the first bell? So, when you were listening to the other person just now, did you find that something they said resonated with your situation as well? Yes. Although they may, come from a completely different background, there are certain things that we share here, aren't there, that bring us to this. And part of it is that we'd really quite like to be more competent about this, but not quite sure where to dock on, where to anchor ourselves there. So I'm going to increase that uncertainty by asking you now to have an inward conversation with yourself for a moment. And that is, can you just put up your hand if you're sitting here with children somewhere in the background? So are you parents? Most of you are. There's no judging. If you're not, it's fine. But if you weren't, just imagine, okay, you had a child. And what I'd like you to go back to is the place at which, before you had children, at which you inwardly said to yourself, I want to be a parent. Okay? So take a moment to kind of inwardly go there. Yeah? I'm going to say yes to the idea of being a parent. How did you envisage your life with a child? So, what made you say yes to that? You must have had an attractive image in front of your inner eye of yourself and the child, of yourself as a parent, that made you say, that looks good. That looks good enough to say yes to somehow. You don't have to share that now, just kind of go there for a moment. Can you still reach that? You're young and carefree and all these kind of things. You kind of go, no, I want that in my life. And the next photo, there's going to be two photos. The one on the left might come close to what you were envisaging. Right? We're going to enjoy life more because we are together. Swinging on the swings is fun anyway, but swinging on swings together is more fun than swinging on swings by ourselves. And somehow that's parent and child relationship, isn't it? Yes, you could live without a parent or without a child, but somehow it makes whatever you are experiencing more worthwhile, more real, deeper somehow. But the picture on the right is a daily reality, isn't it? When we're walking through towns, through places, it's parents who've somehow managed to lose that space in their soul because other stuff has taken over. And I'm not judging people who experience that. Maybe if I showed those adults that picture, they'd be quite worried because they've never thought of themselves in that kind of way. But take a moment to appreciate the facial expression of the little boy and the physical attitude also of the little boy. What might be going through his mind right now? If you had to give a title to his, what do we read in his body language?
Sad.
Yeah?
Ignored.
Yeah, frustration. Rejection.
Yeah.
I find, what I find almost most touching is that there's a kind of resignation there. He's not the kind of child that goes and kicks his mom's shins and say, pay attention to me. I'm going to do all sorts of crazy things now so that you notice me. He's sort of gone, what can I do? So, just now when I asked you to go to that inner place and picture why, what made me want to become a parent, this is my introduction to the brief moment when I'm going to go esoteric on you and spiritual. What about your child themselves before they became your child? What were they hoping for? So this is the spiritual bit, if you like. Yeah. So if you were here last month, you already recognized this diagram, which I show in almost every lecture about child education because I find it so useful. It's not my invention. The bottom parabola here represents everything that's already there before we get born. Okay, so everything that becomes nature and nurture, our parents' genetic material, their social values, their wealth, the language of the country, the laws of the country, etc., etc. All these are things that once I'm born, I can't change. I just have to kind of accept them for what they are, right? And there's lots of people who say that's all we ever are. Everything we are is either what we've inherited or what people have taught us. And the approach within Waldorf education, Rudolf Steiner's picture of the child differs in that he says, there's something else. I'm bringing me along. And there's something about me, you could call it an inner core maybe, that isn't dependent on whether I'm male or female, black or white, rich or poor. That's just my eternal and unique me-ness. Yeah? And this process we know as incarnation, becoming flesh. And what happens is that when I get born, this whatever it is that is my unique me-ness now has to meet the we-ness, for want of a better word, and integrate into that society that's already there. And in his first lecture to the future teachers on the eve of the first Waldorf school course, before the school was opened, Steiner describes this as the role of the teacher, to accompany that process. The integration of my uniqueness into the general social apparatus that's already there. Because I don't want to just be like everyone else, because then what's the point? But I also don't want to just be what I am, because I won't have many friends if I'm like that. And so that's the process of education. I bring an impulse, I've come into an environment, and in the middle of that, that's kind of where my life is happening. And how long does that process take, would you say? This integrative process?
It's forever ongoing, I would say.
You're right. It's not just a childhood thing, is it? It's the longer I get, the longer I live on the earth, the bigger that Venn area here becomes, right? So my soul life gets richer, yeah, and part of it will always be me, and part of it will always be my environment, and within that I have some kind of an agency. And the people who educate me, my environment, not just the people who educate me, but my environment kind of works on that with me. So you could say that everything I learn, all the knowledge and skills that I accumulate while I'm on the earth, that's, you could call that qualification. Yeah? I get more and more qualified the older I get. And it serves two masters. On one aspect, I have to learn what the rules are here in this place. To not speak when I've got my mouth full of food, for example. That's something I learned fairly early. But also reading and writing, that's all got to do with getting on with other people. And everything I learn also tells me something about me. Do I prefer horses or tennis? Yeah, it's, you know, I probably have an opinion on that when I'm 9 years old. I'm not quite sure why, because there are people I really like who prefer horses, and I'm more of a tennis kind of person. But that's just me. There isn't to say that tennis is better than horses. It's just, oh, okay, I'm finding out who I am and what is important to me. And everything I learn gives me a clue to do that. I look around me and the world is my curriculum. Yeah? So if in my family, for example, we say a verse at the beginning of mealtime, that gives me a different relationship to the food we eat, for example. Or if, you know, my mum's, in my case, for example, a total punctuality freak, yeah, that just becomes part of me. Yeah, I can't shake that off for the rest of my life. I'm always going to be 5 minutes early for everything I do. Which is a bit irritating if the people you share your life with aren't like that. Yeah. But that's just who I am, as a result of that kind of integrative process. So it didn't say on any curriculum, oh, Sven Saar must become a punctual person. It just happened, because I learned with my environment. And now put yourself into the shoes of a 3-year-old child, quite literally, and walk through a public park. A few weeks ago, and I think it was in May, I also teach in the kindergarten training seminar in London. It's next to Regent's Park, and one of the other tutors hadn't turned up, so I had a double session with this particular group of early years kindergarten trainees. And I said, okay, we're going to go to the park, and we'll try and observe the world like 3-year-olds would. Yeah, so we sat ourselves on the meadow next to the path, and it was a busy Saturday lunchtime. And my question to the students was, what are grown-ups? What do you think they saw? They saw something I was expecting them to see, but I also learned something new. So you sit there and you kind of look up and you imagine you're 3 years old. What are grown-ups? What are they like? How are they different from me?
Like robots?
Serious?
What do you mean when you say robots?
Like very mechanical, repetitive, predictable,
Okay.
all doing the same thing.
Yes. Great, thank you. Let's connect a little bit.
Serious?
Uh-huh.
Not pay attention to the environment.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Very goal-driven.
Yeah.
Yes. It is a Saturday, so you don't get many, people at work, so to speak. And it's Regent's Park, it's a nice sunny day. One thing I hadn't expected to see, but which I did see, and the students did as well, grown-ups are the ones who carry a coffee cup around. Yeah. So 11:30 on a Saturday, everybody was carrying their friend. I had never seen that before. Yeah. But suddenly, as a 3-year-old, when you're not looking for something, you're just absorbing. You suddenly see that. Yeah. Another student said, almost every grown-up is pulling a case. Because this is, tourist season, and so lots of people drawing sort of wheelie suitcases. Yeah, I'd also never noticed that with my adult view, but you probably can guess where I'm going with this. Now picture you're 1.5, and you're in a buggy and you're being pushed, through a busy street. What do you see of the grown-up world around you?
Hopefully you're looking at your mom.
Yeah. Hopefully, you're right. Yeah, ideally you're looking up at your mum's face and not out into the world. as you're looking out into the world.
Very much. A lot of it.
Yeah, you see people who are hiding their faces. You're not quite sure why. Yeah, it's just, and I mean, please don't. I'm not saying this to make anybody feel guilty in this room. It's just, it's a kind of reality, yeah, for young children, and of course this is their curriculum. So it would be quite understandable if a 2.5-year-old, once they can communicate verbally, if you ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up, or how do you see your life, if they're going to ask, when do I get one of those things? Yeah, because that's what all the big people seem to be holding up. Yeah, so that seems to be part of that kind of world, and when can I be part of that? So that's a very genuine question, because as everybody who's got very young children knows, we don't really educate young children in their first 4 or 5 years. They sort of do what we do. Yeah, they pick up what we do. So kindergarten teachers don't really design educational processes. They just do life, and the kids kind of go along with it and pick up life age appropriately as they go on with it. So what I want to talk about for the next 20 minutes or so is something that is very much not connected with the digital world, and it's because it's not connected with the digital world that it is so important. One of the first experiences we have is touching things. I mean, quite literally. Yeah, we touch the inside of our mother's womb. We have this incredibly traumatic birth experience, yeah, which is probably the most invasive way we'll ever get touched for the rest of our lives, right at the beginning of that. Yeah. And then this whole relationship that we have with our caregiver after birth is one where touch is probably the most prominent experience we could possibly have. Yeah, we're constantly being picked up, hugged, with anybody who's suckled a baby. Of course, that's not an experience I've had. Yeah, knows this is about far more than the transfer of milk, right? There's all sorts of little movements of hands and of toes and of everything going on. And I'm picking up information about my child, and my child is picking up information about me. And it's not just drinking, it's actually connecting to me, but also connecting to itself. The sense of touch is an interesting one, because I am under the illusion that it gives me information about the world, right? So I touch the piano, and it feels hard. But that's actually not what happens. Maybe one or two of you are biologists, and you know why that is an illusion. What am I actually feeling when I'm touching the piano? I'm feeling my own softness. Because the receptors for touch, if I now showed you a picture of the skin, of the human skin, they're not on the outside. They're on the inside of the skin. So it's not like the little hairs that we have on our hands, but they look like little hairs, but they're between our outer layer and our middle layer of skin. Okay? So what I'm feeling when I touch the piano is that I'm softer than it. So actually it's giving me information about me, not about the world. Yeah? If I'm touching this, I feel that I'm harder than it. Yeah? And my brain immediately translates that, but this sense of touch really shows me me. And if you, just for a moment, have this image of running your hand through a field of corn, yeah? And then imagine doing that on an iPad. If you can do that as well, of course, you can have a very good simulation of, corn actually responding to this. What's the difference? The surface of the iPad feels the same every time, right? I do that. Yeah? So it looks like grass, yeah, it behaves like grass, but it doesn't feel like grass. And so everything I touch on a screen is harder than I am, right? So I don't really get that kind of the subtlety of the me experience that I get if I touch lots and lots of different things. If I touch water and mud and concrete and metal and all these kind of things that I can touch in the actual world. This is not an anti-iPad argument, it's just a pro-everything else argument, yeah, that I get from that. And I think we've got time for this. If you've come with somebody who you don't mind touching you, okay, please don't turn to a stranger now if this could be a bit invasive, all right? Do you know the verse that starts with the words round and round the garden? Okay? You can do it on yourself as well, but it doesn't work quite so well. So you roll up your sleeve if you want to participate in this. The rest of you just sort of, So this is how it works, okay? So the mother or the father on the child's palm, yeah? Round and round the garden, like a teddy bear. A one-step, a two-step, a tickle-tickle there, yeah? Doesn't really work on myself. It's not as ticklish as if somebody else does it. Yeah? So what are we doing here? I mean, how is this educationally valuable, right? Why would a teddy bear go around the garden? And, what is this all about? Do you want to speculate?
It's connecting with the person.
Yes. Yeah? There's a whole connectivity here. And, of course, why does it make me shudder when my mum does that here?
There's anticipation as well.
Yes, it's interesting. It's not exactly pleasant. Yeah, that's why I don't like to be tickled, and at some point I say stop, and yet I kind of want it to happen. And all what we're doing is here, we're building a relationship. Yeah, it's not really about the actual touching, it's touching as a means of building relationship. And that is, of course, a very real thing that happens right from birth. It doesn't really stop until they kind of go, Mom, yeah, maybe age 10 or when, however you've built that relationship, at some point they'll let you know when they don't want it anymore. And then we come to a second area of sensation. You won't find this one in biology textbooks as a sense of well-being, but if I asked you now, and you weren't British, how are you? And you didn't automatically say fine. But actually, maybe some of you have done that. If you do Qigong or something like that, you go through a scan. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever done that. Yeah, you kind of, if I do this course with a whole day, then we've got time to now start at the soles of our feet, and we go to our toes, on the top of our feet, on our ankles, and we work our way through the entire body, and we check in with ourselves. And this sort of scan will come to a point where I kind of go, oh, there is something. And if I feel there is something, what is it usually that I'm feeling? Like, say, my knees. Oh, what's the matter with my knees? What am I experiencing? Pain, yes. Yeah? Pain or unwellness of some kind is an indication that that's an area that requires attention. And the fact that I can do that has to do with this sense of well-being. Yeah? So I kind of know if I'm not all right, and it's because I'm getting a signal. And this is also something that I can't really learn in the virtual world, because it's not really happening with my head. Yeah? That's why children so often say when they're not feeling well, I've got a tummy ache. If you're parents, you know that sentence. Or if you're a class 1, 2 teacher, what do children usually express when they say, I've got a tummy ache? I mean, sometimes their stomach actually hurts, but in my experience, 3 out of 5 times.
They need the toilet?
Say again? They might need the toilet, yes.
Is it anxiety?
Anxiety, yeah. Something for which they don't have any other word. They use a physical word for that, yeah. And tummy ache is probably because it's the one where if I've got a headache, nobody can really do anything about it. Tummy ache, somebody can make better. Yeah, by giving me a hot water bottle or a nice cup of tea or something. I'm aware that tummy ache goes away. And that's why so I'm saying to the adult, I need help. Yeah, I want something. Something's not right. And this is this sense of well-being for which I need lots of real experience so I can become more of a reality, because at some point I'm going to be old enough to not ask for the therapy, but to provide it myself. I need to find a way of making myself better. Yeah? And that's, of course, part of this emancipation movement. The third area is scientifically called proprioception. So it's my awareness of my own moving. Yeah? And that is, again, something that is very connected to a real environment. Let's focus for a moment on this young person in the tree. How are they moving? If you find an adverb to describe, to characterize the way they're going up or down that tree.
Climbing.
Yeah, find an adverb now to find out how are they climbing.
Carefully.
Yes. Yeah. Doesn't actually, I still haven't worked out, I've seen this picture many times, I don't know if they're going up or down, yeah? But they are moving very deliberately and carefully, right? So there's certain fixed points and there's some point that searches. And what has enabled them to climb carefully? What must have happened at some point in their past so that they now climb carefully? Yes, yeah. The experience that not climbing carefully, causes the sense of life to say something's hurting. Yeah. So the sense of well-being gets involved and feeds back to me. That's not the way to climb a tree.
It's also the ability to read information from your environment through
Yes.
your limbs.
Exactly that.
Without looking.
And then again, picture, there's, for everything that I'm showing you, there are apps, okay? For absolutely everything that I'm showing you in these things, there are things where I can replicate this, yeah? And of course, if I play a computer game, if I do a Wii kind of thing, there's lots of balancing involved. Lots of games involve, characters falling off things or climbing up things. But will they help me to hone my own sense of safety and movement? Probably not. I don't think anybody's actually going to learn to ride a physical bike by learning to ride a virtual bike. I can't prove that yet, but there's probably a study somewhere that has looked at that. Could that work? Could you sit on a chair, play a bike riding game, and then go out, get on a bike and ride off? I'm not quite sure. But, having built this bridge, why is she, I think it's a girl, lifting up her feet? That's a different kind of movement.
That's fun.
Because it's fun. It's not a deliberate movement like this. Yeah? She's not seeing, oh, I'm balancing myself better this way, or I'm unbalancing myself. She's just doing it for the pure joy of it. She's playing, experimenting, trying to find out. She's doing something spontaneous. That's why I've got that photo there, because that's another thing we can't do on an iPad, is to do anything spontaneous. Because whatever game we play, every movement that is possible has already been programmed there. Yeah, we can't go anywhere that the programmer didn't already go. We can't just do something just for the sheer fun of it. And you might say, well, maybe you don't have to. I learned to ride a bike and I never lifted my feet off the pedals, and I'm fine. Sure, that's true. But what is she learning? Yes, she's learning how to balance, but she's also learning how to be playful and to trust that nothing will happen. And do you know what this woman is doing? You can probably guess from where she is and where she's looking. She's reverse parking. Okay? Now, in this room there will be people who are good at reverse parking and people who are not good at it. Okay? And especially if you're good at it, follow me on this one, yeah? You may know exactly in your head what you need to do. Okay? But even if you don't, I would postulate that we all end up in the parking space with the same inner feeling. Yes. If it works, yeah? Even if we're really good at it. Why? Because we know there's a sort of 15% chance that we make a mess of it, even if we're good at it. Yeah? Even if we know how to line everything up. Yeah? If it works out really beautiful, yes. Yeah? Because we're still improvising now. We don't know exactly for sure how we move. We are still creatures of accident and circumstance, and that's something that only happens analog. Yeah, this idea of, I don't know, that I'm good for the first 80% and the rest then I just make up as it comes. And you know what, if it doesn't work so well, I'll drive out again, I'll try once more. It's fine. Yeah? This element of spontaneity and playfulness and accident is something that belongs, I think, to our world and not so much to the digital world, because everything there is predictable, isn't it?
I'd have to argue that when you're learning to use a computer program, you do a lot of spontaneous play, because it's the only way to figure out how to make it work.
But isn't it that you can only, do you mean as an existing game?
Well, let's say
Or
I'm
when you're
learning how to
programming yourself.
edit a video.
Yeah.
I've got no idea where anything is.
Yep.
Only by moving things around, clicking different tools,
Yep.
seeing what they do, trying different things on the menu is the only way to actually figure out.
I would say that you're still limited by the person who designed the menu. Yeah? And this is a limit. Yes, of course, you could say, you'd also argue, well, I can't fly, so I'm limited by gravity. So the human being is also limited. my argument would be that because we're so imperfectly designed, we're less limited than something that is designed for a particular purpose. So there is more space, I would say, for spontaneity in the human being than in the machine, generally. But thank you. I take what you're saying. Finally, the sense of balance isn't quite the same as the sense of movement. What do we read in this young person's face?
Whoa, I'm focused.
So, what is that person experiencing? Joy. Yes. Thrill. Good. Triumph.
Strength.
Yes. Is everything positive here?
Yeah.
A bit of fear.
Isn't it? I can see a little bit of fear there. Yeah. Can't quite believe. Surely this isn't going to work. Yeah? And he's right, because it isn't. He's going to crash down, isn't he? And what will he do next?
Get up again.
Yeah, he will get up and try it again. Could I just ask you to stand up for a moment? And just find a comfortable way of standing. And now, can you stand really still? I don't mind so much what you do with your hands or your head, but you know, the lower part of your body can stand completely still. And now, direct your attention to the soles of your feet. And feel what they are doing while you are standing completely still. What do you notice?
Yeah.
There is movement there, isn't there? So try and switch that off. All you're doing is standing still. You don't need to move. Can you?
Start to get back.
You notice it more, don't you?
Mm.
Yeah, when you're trying to get. Thank you for that. So the reason for that is that the human being isn't designed to be stable. Yeah, we've only got two legs, and you can't create stability with two pillars. Yeah, it would have to be very, very massive pillars in order to, and our pillars aren't massive enough for that. Okay, so we're designed to be unstable, but we're also designed to catch and restore our balance all the time. And the picture on the right shows, you know, that if you're doing this well, it becomes an art form. Yeah, so a dancer is never stable, is always unstable, but is playing with that, is elevating that instability. And again, instability is not something that we would associate with an efficient machine. Yeah, this idea of I'm losing it, but I'm finding it again, and then I'm losing it again, and I'm finding it again, only for a fleeting moment of time, and then comes the instability again. In fact, this whole shoddiness, for want of a better word, of the design of the human being as an instability, that there's a very powerful metaphor there. Yeah? That maybe we're just not designed to stand still. Maybe we're designed to continually progress as we go on. And maybe this constant experience of falling over, getting up again, falling over, getting up again, is how we are supposed to be learning. Some of you, especially those of you who are parents of young children, will be familiar with the situation in the top right corner. Yeah, you come round the corner into the corridor and you see your child climbing down the stairs. What do you do?
Rush to help them.
Yeah, you're the parent. What do you do?
Breathe.
My guess is even if you manage to resist the impulse, your impulse will be to scoop up your child and save that child from falling down. I would suggest don't do that. Instead, put a carpet on your stairs. Make your stairs nice and soft to allow your child to fall down as often as they possibly can, but safely. This is a kind of novel idea in child education, and it goes back to Emmy Pickler, who lived just after Rudolf Steiner did, a Hungarian child psychologist, who says the best gift we can give our children is the opportunity to fall off things frequently. And so she designed materials that encourage children to do just that. Again, put yourself into the position of this child. Yeah, they've done the easy bit, and now what they're going to do? What happens when they've moved 2 more hands? they're now out of balance. Yeah, the top part of their body will be heavier than the bottom part. So what will they need to do? That's one possibility. Most children don't turn around at this point. Yeah, not at that age anyway. Yeah, some of them might go back. Yeah, some children will actually fall and start bawling because they hurt themselves. Other children will grip harder than they did on the way up. On the way up, the feet did all the hard work. On the way down, the fists have to take that role because otherwise I fall over. I learned that because I've fallen over once before, and now I'm doing it again, and this time I'm doing it better. So this child is its own teacher right now, with the help of this material. And there's a carpet underneath it, and these children are supposed to fall off these things. Yeah, it's absolutely vital that they do, because they'll want to get up again and try it again because they like doing this. Yeah, and that little bit of pain is overcomable through increased dexterity. So this is something that is absolutely essential as part of their education, and that journey can continue. I'm making a bit of a leap now into school time. All the children you see on these three pictures are my pupils, okay? And this is like class 1, class 2, and class 3. 3 different experiences that they've had. In class 1, we had this thing that for about half of the days of the school year, the first 15 minutes of the day, I set up some kind of an obstacle course in the classroom for the children to go on when they came in. And they could self-choose what they were going to do. So some children are kind of walking here along those steps, other children are climbing under those. It's kind of going round and round. They don't have to do this, but this is a very attractive thing to do. And this is hard, okay? Again, it's risk assessed, obviously. There's cushions at the bottom. Those cushions are not a foam pit. Yeah? Because, why not? Because a foam pit is fun to fall into. I'm not going to actually work on holding on to stuff if there's a nice foam pit to fall into. I want to be a little bit worried about falling down, yeah? Because it won't be fun. So I'm going to work harder on maintaining my balance here. So we do this for 10-15 minutes every morning, because these children are modern children. They haven't spent their first 7 years climbing trees and wading through rivers. They've sat a lot of time on the sofa and on the floor playing Lego and things like that. They need to add a little bit to their maturity, if you like. And they need to have experiences that really challenge them on a physical level. So this is a day when it's 35 degrees, okay? It's really, really hot. We've got a little stream not far from the school. And the day before I've told the children, tomorrow you need 3 things. You need your swimming things, you need a pair of old trainers, and you need a belt, okay? And if you bring those things to school, then you can take part in what we're going to do just before you go home. And so I fixed a climbing rope, you don't see that so very well, about 50 meters from a tree on the bank there, and not across the river, but along the river, okay, to a tree. The river does a little bit like that, and it's never deeper than this, but it's really cold. Yeah? So what they do now is they tie the belt around that so that they're tied to that rope a little bit, and they're kind of using the rope to push, to move up against the current of this very cold water. So it's not dangerous because they've got trainers on their feet, and they can't really disappear because they're tied up and I'm watching them and all that. But it's really exciting. Yeah. So you have the coldness, you've got the expression, the experience of the current pushing against, and you can see how different children, from their face expression, how they relate to it in different ways, depending on what their temperaments might be. And you could say, in one way, this replicates a sort of Lara Croft type video game. Yeah. Now we're doing it for real, but it's just so much more. Not well, I want to say fun, but it's not about fun. I learn so much more when I do it in the real world. And finally, this is the children creating their own curriculum. So it snowed. There is a pathetic little hill just behind the classroom. It's maybe about, height difference is maybe 1.80 meters, 6 foot or something like that. And they found a big tarpaulin. And they've got this idea that children get. Let's all sit next to each other on this tarpaulin and all slide down the hill together. Yeah, and of course it doesn't work, because it doesn't. and they all kind of, the tarpaulin tangles and they all tangle over each other. So this plan goes wrong. But if you're close enough to see this, you'll see that they're all got big smiles on their faces. Yeah? So they're not actually super comfortable right now in this situation. They're kind of topsy-turvy and, all over the place, but they're having a whale of a time. And again, this is, yes, I'm touching lots of things are touching me, I'm losing my balance, but I will get up again in a moment. This is just so real. And I know I haven't talked about digital things for over half an hour now, but I wanted to make this point that how important within the environment that we provide real learning experiences are, because everything that will come in the virtual world will simply perpetuate what we've already learned. Last week I was at a university in Germany teaching alongside somebody who is an expert in media education. And when she teaches the same students that I was teaching, they always want to know, well, how do I tell children about the dangers of WhatsApp and things like that when there's a problem with cyberbullying? And she's an expert on this, and she says, this is nothing, I don't help the children by teaching them about social media. I help the children by teaching them about kindness and cruelty. Because cyberbullying is not a WhatsApp and social media problem, it's a social problem. Children, if they didn't have social media, they would bully each other in real life. Okay? So this is not, we don't face this problem because we have smartphones. We face this problem because we didn't work in an analog way before that on the principle of kindness and social inclusion and so on. So this is really important as an essential aspect. So now I'm going to show you something quite old. Some of you might know this already. Have any of you heard of the still face experiment?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just over 50 years ago that happened. If you've never seen this, I think it's hopefully it's loud enough for you to hear Dr. Tronick describe it as well. I don't have to say anything. He'll explain what it is about.
Babies this young
Okay.
are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them.
That's very quiet, isn't it? For some reason, it's not being replicated here. If you bear with me for a moment, it gives you a break from my voice anyway. Can you hear it?
Yeah.
Yeah? Then, because it would take me a while now to sort that out. But let's try it. Let's try it again.
This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In this still phase experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby who's about a year of age. And she gives a greeting to
This is the school's Wi-Fi. Hopefully it'll be back in a moment. Hang on. I'm just going to go out and come back in. I think that's the simplest way of restoring the connection. Oh, that's interesting. What happened there? Wow. It's got my desktop now. This is weird. Sorry. I'm fascinated by that, but I can't get into it now. That hasn't happened to me. Let's try again. Yeah, okay. Is this the Wi-Fi thing again? Don't know why it shouldn't work now. Unfortunately, I'm relying.
You signed in as a guest.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, it is. I have done online stuff today already.
Yeah, but what I'm just checking on my phone, the guest one has less bars than the...
Oh, I'm on Prue's house.
You are, okay.
Yeah, so it should work. It's worth waiting for a moment, so I'm just going to go back again, go in and out again. Just, oh, okay, no, I'm not connected at all, that's why. Okay, let's try that. I've lost the Wi-Fi. Okay, interesting. That's what happened. All right. Sorry to make you wait. Should be back now.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In this still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby who's about a year of age. And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her. This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this, and then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, "Come on, why aren't we doing this?" Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it, they actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing. It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
And you can probably tell why I'm showing you this 50 years later, because most people, and you can test this out, most people that look at phones don't show what they see on their faces. Yeah, so we have lots of emotions depending on what we're looking at, but those emotions don't show on our face. Yeah, it actually, whether we're reading something upsetting or something funny, we rarely laugh or cry. It's just resting face. Yeah, and this is what these children then see, of course, when they look at their parents, even if they don't see the dark rectangle. Yeah, they don't see movement there, and they don't know what to do. One thing they really can't cope with is emotionlessness on the face of the person who's with them. And you probably get what the point I'm trying to make here is not, oh, if you're a bad parent if you do that. I'm trying to go against the conventional prejudice that we at Waldorf schools say you damage your child by exposing them to digital apparatus. That's actually, I haven't shown you anything about that. What the point I'm trying to get is when they're engaged with this, or when you as parents are engaged with this, what are they not getting? So what are they missing because of it? Not how damaging is it to watch a cartoon on an iPad and all that kind of thing, but actually what could they be doing instead that they're not getting right now because either you or the child themselves have got the screen. Yeah, so what other things could be going on? And for this, and there's a lot of text now on the screen which you don't necessarily need to read, it's too fast anyway. I'd like to recommend a resource for you and also maybe for people who you talk to about this. There's an initiative by German Waldorf teachers and anthroposophical doctors called Screen Free Until 3. And the website is a German website. It's called Bildschirmfrei bis 3. Yeah? But as you can see here, it's got an English language thing. Okay? I think you can even get it if you Google Screen Free Until 3. That will also take you there. And what you get here is ideas. You know, simple ideas, not things to say, don't do this, don't do that, but do this, do that, try this. And you know, we don't get trained in being parents, do we? It's not like being teachers. You know, and yet we have all this responsibility. How are we supposed to know how to get it right? So there's absolutely no, there's nothing bad about getting some advice. You know, doing things with children, in front of children, making or allowing children to do things that haven't got anything to do with that, and also looking at the way we relate ourselves to the media in the environment of the child, because this is something we do know, that children up to the age of about 9 or 10 really learn chiefly through imitation. That is their main source of development, is what do the big people do? I'm gonna do the same. And if as a kindergarten teacher or as a teacher of young children in the school, I get a child who is playing up weirdly and doing strange things, my first question is not so much what's wrong with the child, but what aspect of their environment has made an impact on them that they can't cope with. Yeah? So if a child starts wetting the bed or starts screaming uncontrollably, what is it that made them behave like that, quite literally? And what are they playing out? What is going on in their environment that could have caused this? Because it's very rarely something that comes from the inside out. And now we make the bridge to media competencies. Okay, so first of all, media, we tend to think of electronic things, but of course a medium is anything which is essentially a tool for communication. And to start with, if I tell the child a story, that's a medium. Do they learn from me how to listen to stories? Try telling a story to a 15-month-old baby. What's that going to do? How is it going to respond to me telling it a story? Maybe some of you do that on a regular basis. What do they do?
They usually want more bits. They'll ask for more.
15 months old?
Oh, 15 months old.
Yeah.
I forgot. It's going to be a very short story.
It's going to be a very short story, or a super entertaining one, or a very repetitive one. Yeah. So I'm going to have to make sure that they stay with me, and gradually, as the child gets older, the story gets longer. Yeah. And this is how they learn how to listen to a story, so that when they're 3 years old and I tell them a story, they won't jump up in the middle and run out to play. Yeah. That's media use. Yeah. I'm engaging with something that my parent is giving me as an educational tool, an interesting story that I want to hear the end of. That's the beginning of media use. And the next step up is to listen to a story that's being read. Why is it not quite the same? Because the personal connection isn't quite so strong. Yeah? When my dad tells me a story, I'm listening, he's looking at me. Yeah? I'm having a connection with him. I might not even listen that much to the story because I'm enjoying that dad moment. But when he's behind a book, it's slightly different. Yeah, it's one step removed, but that's also something I need to learn. And it'll take me a few weeks or months, and then I know that too. I know how to do that. And then I begin to learn to read and write, and I can begin to access those stories myself. And so it's a gradual sophistication and emancipation. And at some point that then gets transferred to the non-physical realm. Yeah? So I've got a Kindle, yeah, that looks exactly the same always, but the stories and the letters look exactly the same. Doesn't matter if I look at, Grimm's stories or Harry Potter, it looks exactly the same, but I'm creating the world, I'm entering the world that is being created there. That's a very sophisticated level of competence already. And these 3 steps is what we're going to look at now. So I'm beginning to enter a world which is slightly unpredictable. It's not as safe as a book, because while a book does generally one thing, a digital tool for reading does more than one thing. So safety does actually have to come right at the beginning of that. And then I gradually need to learn, how am I using it so that it makes me a more efficient person? That sounds very grown up when I say that. But it's kind of the process of becoming an adult, isn't it? Yeah, I don't want to become less emotional as an adult. I just want to become more competent. And that's what I mean by professional here. Yeah? How do I use professional tools so that if it's my birthday, I'm 13 or something like that, I don't have to write a card to everybody I want to come to my birthday. I just know how to write a message and send them to everybody so they can get them on their phones. Yeah? It actually gives me more time to play if I do that. So that's an efficiency thing that I might or might not learn. And then we come to the area where you are. What do I do then to actually create stuff or be as near as possible a creative person? So I'm deliberately using as an example here something that is a little old-fashioned. I started first working with this realm about 10 years ago. Last time I had a grade 8. When they were grade 5, I had the idea, I watched them having access to computers in their family homes. At that time, nobody in my class had a smartphone because they had only just really become a thing, 2012, 13, 14. And that wasn't really something I needed to think about, but a lot of them were given computer time on their parents' computers. And what were they doing with those computers? They weren't writing emails or doing homework, they were playing games. And in our school, computer lessons began in grade 9. So we've got a 4-year gap here for me to teach myself that the computer is a fun tool, a thing for, a fun machine. And then at some point the teacher's going to tell me, no, it's not about that, it's about an efficiency thing for professional things. At that time I have so many bad habits already that in that year, 2011, I tried to persuade my colleagues to allow me to teach the children in my class 10-finger touch typing. Okay? To begin to use a computer, a laptop, for the purpose it was intended to. So simple text things, production of texts, not really internet-related stuff, just to understand that it's a machine and not a fun world. And I was in a school with, I think, 45 teachers. I was even chairing the meetings, I was faculty chair, and I had all the good arguments, and I could pick up while I was speaking that my colleagues weren't really with me on this. And so, and I said, can you just put up your hand if you think that is a good idea? Not a single hand went up, not one. They all kind of went, no, sorry, you're not doing that. So I didn't, I couldn't. There was just no, but it sort of needled me that I thought, but I kind of sense that this is necessary. Somehow I want to find out more about this. So I looked at what the state system was doing. What is the mainstream approach to this? And at the time, something that was considered really important was what was called digital citizenship. And we have various models of that nowadays still. The principle hasn't really changed. A citizen is somebody in this picture who has agency, kind of can negotiate the world with some sovereignty, with some feeling of, yeah, I know where it's at and what needs to be doing. And I need to manage my screen time, my footprint, I need to bring critical thinking to these things, I need to make sure that I don't hurt people. So there were these 8 areas, and I thought, yeah, that sounds quite sensible. So what would media curriculum in the Waldorf school actually look like? And my idea was that, at the time already, that we're not trying to replace analog stuff, we're trying to extend it. So we add the digital world to the analog world, age appropriately and at a certain time. So we begin with storytelling and books and pictures and real experiences, and then we move on from there and transfer that knowledge to this other realm. The question is, when do we start with that? So this is my personal approach to this is, and forgive me the German things in there, I'm not actually showing you this video, so it doesn't really matter. But I was teaching geography to my grade 5 children, so age 10, 11, in Germany, and I decided to show them a TV documentary. Now, if you come from mainstream education, that's a totally normal thing to do. Okay? In the Waldorf school, it isn't. Okay, to wheel a TV into a screen into a class 5, yeah, and start. But crucially, it's 40 minutes long. I didn't show them a 40-minute film because that's what I got at school. Yeah, teacher switches on the film, then goes to the teacher's room to have a coffee and a cigarette, you know, and then comes in and switches it off again, and that was the lesson. Instead, first of all, I know what I want with this film. We're just doing the River Rhine, okay? And we're doing coal mining around the River Rhine. And there's a fascinating phenomenon. It's the largest hole in Europe. It's basically an essentially gigantic open cast mine, which is probably about 7 or 8 kilometers from one end to the other, and it moves, okay? So they keep on developing it at one end, you know, opening it up, and they're closing it up at the other end, because there the coal is exhausted. But in the path of this hole, they've already swallowed up 48 villages since this hole was opened in 1950. Yeah? There were villages for decades, and they disappear literally under this bulldozer. Yeah? And these people, they all get given different homes till they move somewhere else, you know? And they know, most of them know 10 years in advance that in 10 years' time, our house is going to disappear into that hole. Yeah? And there's nothing we can do about this. And this documentary interviews those people, but it also interviews a very fascinating guy who's overseeing the renaturization of what happens afterwards. Because where the hole is being closed, where the coal mining is finished, they don't put villages back, they create a nature reserve. Yeah, they make lakes, they bring badgers there and beavers and, you know, all kinds of things. And for the people in the surrounding cities and villages, this becomes a place where they go and enjoy nature. So there's always more than one thing, and it's fascinating for the children to begin to listen to the stories of these people. So I'm showing them an interview with somebody who the interview lasts about 6 minutes, and I tell them before, okay, look out for what they're going to say when they're being asked this or that question. And then they listen to the interview, and afterwards we talk about it. And then we move to another segment of the film where there's an interview with the guy who drives the biggest digger in the world. Because in the biggest hole in Europe is also the biggest digger in the world. Yeah? The wheel of the digger is higher than this room. The wheel. Yeah? It's just an incredible machine. And I've never yet found a 10-year-old boy who isn't amazed. Yeah? So there's lots of aspects that I couldn't quite replicate as a teacher, but this is brilliant. It's an old documentary. It's from, I think, the early 2000s. But what are the children learning? Oh, okay, I can use media for something. Yeah? I'm not just sitting here getting the popcorn out, I'm actually engaging with it. And what is my teacher doing? He's modeling how to do that. We're not just sitting consuming, we're actually engaging with material that is on the screen. And this is how it begins, so to speak. Yeah? We're not even touching computers yet, but I'm beginning to show this is how adults can use that kind of technology. So, again, don't worry about so much about the writing that's here. What I want to show you here is that there actually is a Waldorf media curriculum, because you can actually study this at the Waldorf University, yeah, in Stuttgart. If you study to be a class teacher there, you have a secondary subject. For some people that's teaching modern languages or music or something like that. But you can study media education and get a diploma in Waldorf media education. That's a proper thing now, because every Waldorf school needs somebody who kind of gets it from that perspective. So my approach would be something like this, and every school is going to see this in a slightly different way. So I think we begin to learn to read and write, and then this class library thing, to use books, to have books in our classroom that we can actually read is really important. It's quite surprising how often I go into schools and class 1 is full of books, but way too advanced. Yeah, that they could never really actually want to pillar books without pictures, and that kind of thing. So let's have a look at what am I looking for. Then they begin to do some kind of research in geography and other things in books to begin with, and then from 5th grade gradually we're bringing in electronic media in a structured way. So for example, they learn how to touch type. I think that's really still an important part for this generation. It may not be in future. Maybe typing is disappearing, I don't know. And I think it's perfectly appropriate for a 6th grader to have an email address and to learn how to use that productively. And in an email, of course, you don't write with lots of emojis and abbreviations. You actually have to still learn how to write grammatically. The old-fashioned Waldorf curriculum had the writing of business letters at this age. Yeah. Now it's a business email. Nobody writes a letter anymore, which still needs to have the skill of having everything lined up this way and that way, and signed and referenced and so on. So what I did with my grade 8, for example, because I did teach them computers in 7 and 8, the computer skills, not coding or anything like that, was to have a project at the end of grade 8, roughly similar to what they do here, more based on sort of studying somebody's biography and presenting them. But it had to be done on the computer. Yeah? So we had learned in those 2 years to create text documents, to put the photos in the right place, to source everything, to cite references and things like that, to prepare a PowerPoint presentation and to give this. And if you like, their graduation was that presentation at the end of class 8. So they were not just showing what they'd learned about this historic personality, they also could show off their skills in mastering text programs in this kind of way. So this was in the early days. As I say, I'm not an expert. But
sorry, was that your approach or the Waldorf? That's not the Waldorf.
Well, that was my approach in a Waldorf school, and I was the first teacher in my school to do that. By that time, my colleagues kind of thought it was a good idea.
Okay.
So that became a habit from then on in that school. Yeah.
In that school, but
so
not
the grade 8
across all the
projects.
Waldorf schools.
No, because there is no, there's nobody who tells Waldorf schools what to do. Yeah, there is no national curriculum that says this is how it has to happen. So each group of teachers sets the baseline, if you like, for its own school, and within that, teachers also have a relative amount of freedom to how to instigate that. So, but every school has to sort of work out what's going to be our policy. Also, what are the expectations in this community? So one of the schools I work with is in Bangalore. I'm going there on Tuesday in India, and they're really having to work with a very high-tech expectation of the parenthood. Bangalore is the Silicon Valley of India. There's some very, very expert parents who really don't understand. They send their children to the Waldorf school, but they don't quite get it why the classrooms aren't full of computers necessarily. So their expectations are much higher than this, for example. Yeah? And you also need to see what's actually real there. I'm going to show you something now. Is it okay if I go 10 minutes over time? Yeah? This is what I've got from a mainstream lesson plan resource on how to teach children about the digital world. Okay? So this is level 1, unit 1. How do you go to places safely on the computer? How do you use the alphabet to find things online? What kinds of information should you keep to yourself on the internet? How can you give credit to your own creative work? How do you connect with others through email? What age group do you think this is aimed at? It's age 5.
Age 5?
Age 5. It's
Age 5?
yes.
Not year 5?
Not year 5, age 5. Yeah?
That's a regular in
That's
the
a national
UK.
curriculum document.
In the UK?
Yes. It's again, it's not mandatory that you use this. Most of the companies that offer these kind of things are commercial companies, and then schools buy into that, yeah, and sort of purchase a program of lesson plans and then teach that. So this is for 5-year-olds. How do you stay safe when you visit a website? The assumption is that they do that by themselves, yeah, that they navigate websites by themselves. All of this stuff is eminently sensible, yeah, it's really sensible stuff, but it's at the wrong age. Yeah, it's, you know, it doesn't sit right with me. But what they do have to learn is something quite important at some point. Yeah, this is what I want to go next. This is me putting a search phrase into Google. What was I looking for? What models could be? Yeah.
Model faces.
Striking eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Also staring eyes, staring face.
You can try this yourself and see what you get. The phrase I put in was beautiful face. Beautiful face. What am I getting? All women, all young women, all Caucasian women. Why? Is Google ageist, sexist, racist? Not really, but the algorithm is feeding me what it thinks will be attractive to me because it knows me. Yeah? I've created a world. The world of the internet is not objective. It's not like switching on the BBC News and everybody who sits in their living room getting the same thing. Nobody's getting what I'm getting. Yeah? Why am I getting this? It's because I'm an old white straight man in Europe. Yeah? That's why I'm getting this. And this is something children do need to understand when they start accessing the internet. That it looks objective, it looks real, but it's designed because I've left a certain footprint. Now, 5-year-olds, yeah, as this website suggests, are really not the right kind of clientele for this. 12-year-olds, absolutely. They should understand. They don't have to understand the technology behind an algorithm, but they have to understand that what they see is not necessarily what everybody else sees. I've got one more of those, which is even more striking. What was I looking for?
Holiday in Mexico.
Tribal house.
I was looking for African house. Why is that problematic? This is the top. I didn't put all the search results, I'd only put the first picture. Why is that problematic? Because of the houses in Africa, less than 1 in 10,000 looks like this. Okay? Yeah. Millions of houses in Africa, you know, 0.0001% maybe look like this. Why am I getting this? Because I'm an old white man in Europe. And most men who are my kind of profile will click on this. Yeah, and then draw it on their blackboard when they talk about houses in Africa in their Waldorf school class 3. Yeah. This is problematic. And this is an example for how what children need to learn for navigating safely on the internet. It's not just about, you know, avoiding porn or anything like that. It's actually understanding that what I'm getting there is not objective but subjective. Yes? Last guess?
African house.
This time I was looking for house in Thailand. Now again, is this representative for houses in Thailand? No, but somebody of my kind of personality profile, when they're looking for a house in Thailand, they probably want to go on holiday. And they probably have money to spend there, so they're getting a villa with a pool. You know? So it's really very specific what's being offered to us here. Yeah? And we're kind of going on through these different levels, and I will give this to the school so you can, you know, circulate the PDF of this. So if you want to have a closer look, it's a bit tedious to look at all this text. I would disagree with very few of these teaching points. They all need to come at some point. What we as educators have to decide is when they come. What's the right time for these things? Yeah. Some things also come back. They come, you know, at level 1 and they come again at level 4, and they come slightly differently. You know, things about respect, for example. But I want to now go to what I think is a good place to start, and that is to do a questionnaire of pupils and actually ask them, what is your reality? So I did this in 2019 with my pupils at the Steiner Academy in Hereford, because we were in the process of working out a policy for our school. And I asked these kids, okay, this is anonymous, yeah? So nobody will know what you said, but let us know, what do you actually access, what do you use on a regular basis? And there are several levels of this. This was interesting. How many of the pupils in your class have a smartphone, do you think? Yeah? And how many of them are allowed more freedom than you? Yeah? I had 27 pupils in my class. Almost everybody's answer was 26. Of course. Yeah. This is an important one. If I give very little advice directly to parents, but if I'm really pushed, that's an advice I definitely give. Yeah? Don't disallow your children devices necessarily, but if they're allowed, keep them in public places until a certain age. That's a huge help if you can do that. How often do you watch things without your parents? And then what do you watch? I never watch things my parents would not like me to watch. I often. That was really interesting what came out of that. And they were very honest. Yeah, they were very open. It was really quite beautiful to see how it was almost they felt the need. They felt kind of respected by the question. Yeah? Oh, you're taking me seriously. You really want to know. And, have you seen people having sex? This, pure Waldorf pupils, 27 Waldorf pupils, exactly bore out what I already knew from statistics. 80% of 11-year-olds have seen hardcore sex on screens.
At the Waldorf school.
In the whole of society, including Waldorf schools. 80% of 11-year-olds. Yeah? Most of these have not looked for it. Yeah? Most of these haven't accessed it by themselves because they haven't typed anything into any kind of search engine. Yeah? They've had a screen held under their noses. Have a look at this. And because of peer pressure, not really had the ability to say no to that. Yeah? That is our modern reality. And yes, Waldorf schools are not exempt from this sort of reality. And that creates something for us. Not really, as some people want to do, a need for let's ban it all. Yeah? Because you know what we were like when we were kids. Did anything that our parents didn't want us to have banned actually stay out of our lives?
Hell no.
Cigarettes, alcohol, no, of course not. We found ways, and of course that's part of childhood, to find ways to access things. So it actually makes more sense for us to look at where do we ban those things. I'll come to that in a minute, because schools are a good place to not have mobile devices. But it's more interesting to kind of see what is actually the reality and then what do we do about that. Okay, so this is, you can design your own questionnaire. I'm happy to make this one available. And then what do we do next? Well, let's have a look at it. Let's share it in our community. That's something I had to really fight for among my colleagues in Hereford. They didn't want the parents to know. They said, let's all work with that. And I said, no, and we must totally publish this. And they say, well, they'll share it with their children. I said, well, yes, fine. The kids should know as well what the other kids are experiencing and what is the reality. Because they won't cooperate in their own protection unless we treat them as responsible kids in this way. We can't keep dominating them all the time. So what could our next steps be? This varies hugely. Some schools, and I don't know if there are any in this country, I'm sure Ringwood doesn't do this, some schools make parents sign contracts before they accept their children. Have you heard of that? Yeah. So if you want to have your kid in a Waldorf school, there's a waiting list. Yeah. You won't even be considered unless you've signed a contract. Say, I won't buy my child a smartphone until they're 12 or 14 or something like that.
I won't buy.
I will not. Yeah. So that's quite a thing. It's quite an invasion of somebody's private right to educate their children as they see fit. Yeah.
There is some quite strong language in the parents' handbook.
Yeah.
That this is our media policy.
Yes.
And if we find that you're not supporting this policy, that could be a reason.
Yeah. And I can see why it's there, because children who are addicted to various forms of that entertainment and don't have their own internal switch-off buttons, can carry stuff into the school that really causes problems for other children. So I understand the need for protectiveness, but actually I would prefer transparency and collaboration with everybody if it were at all possible. And I don't think contracts necessarily are a way of achieving that. Conversation is, because schools, by our nature, we are authoritative. Okay, we're used to telling people what to do. Most of those people are below 18, so it's okay. But it sometimes gets transferred to the way we relate to parents, and that's something we need to learn in schools, to not do that, and still kind of come from a place of authority because we know what we're talking about. Okay, so that's why something like that should sort of be there, and it should involve the pupils if at all possible. And what I'm really thrilled by is schools that have started to do this invariably have done so against the wishes of the pupils. Who've said, we're not only going to tell you not to bring it and to leave it in your pocket, we're actually going to ask you to lock it up when you enter the school grounds. In a pouch, in a locker of some kind. Thing is closed and you will not be able to access it until 3 o'clock this afternoon. Invariably the pupils are against that, furious about it. Invariably 8 weeks later they say that was a really good idea. It's really striking. It's very recent and it's not a government idea. It's a parent grassroots idea that has come from this group in Ireland that started this in their own little community. Don't know if you've read about that. It's spreading everywhere, and I think it's a good thing that it's spreading. This is because evidence bears out that the pupils without their phones at school notice each other more. They have space for social interaction. And you've all seen this picture of sort of 7 teenagers next to each other on the wall, that where each of them is in their own bubble. And I think we're right to be worried about that. So, and this is something where, for once, I would agree, even as a pedagogue, that prohibition is a sensible thing for this environment, because we can control this environment. And we're doing so in the interest of the pupils. So this is what I showed you earlier on. Our duty to teach media competencies, and I just want to show you what I think these competencies are. So this is what I think by the age of 14 or 15 pupils should have learned. If you now ask yourself as a parent, can you teach your child all these things? If yes.
It's not that difficult, because we didn't catch up with our schools until later on. And I work online and it's not really difficult to learn. So I don't see the urgency.
Okay, good answer. You can do these things, right? But that wasn't my question. My question wasn't can you do these things, but can you teach them to your child?
Yes,
Yeah?
of course.
Yeah.
And then that's great. Yeah. Many parents would say, I sort of can do that, but how to teach it so that my child will actually listen? I mean, many of you have tried to help your children with their homework in maths and French and whatnot, and that didn't go very well, did it? So there is a case, I think, for leaving a structured approach to teaching and learning to the people who are trained to do this. And I think that puts this a responsibility back into school, into the realm of school. So I think we can't, as school professionals, we can't rely on the fact that this will be taught at home. So we need to teach it at school. Yeah.
I think young people will often be much more willing to do things that they wouldn't want to do
With you.
if their parents are showing
Yes.
them, if they're seeing their peers do it.
Exactly that. Yeah. And of course, I mean, I know Ringwood does teach these skills already, and there is. I'll come back to what I said at the beginning. There is no school, Waldorf or otherwise, that has cracked this. Yeah, because most of the teachers are, within 20 years or so of my generation, and we're still finding our way with this. Yeah, I think when the present 20-year-olds are in their 40s, it'll be much more joined up as a system, I think. But for the time being, I would say let's bear with each other on this one and work this out, but let's not let our generation down. Let's give them real experiences when they're little and add the digital competencies to those real experiences when they get older. Sorry for keeping you a little bit long, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
There are a few Ringwood teachers here, so of course I can't speak for the school because I don't work at the school. But if you have particular questions or comments or so, we could open this now, but I'm going to clear the stage.
We can open it now.